Okay, so ever feel like you're just absolutely swimming in information, like trying to sip from a fire hose?
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
But you still really crave, getting to the heart of something, that one clear insight. Well, that's pretty much what we aim for here on the deep dive. We try to take all that sprawling knowledge and just boil it down, find the essentials, the really compelling stuff just for you.
Distill it.
Exactly, distill it. And today, we're diving deep into a YouTube transcript. It features Dr. John DeMartini, who's, well, he's an expert on human behavior. Spent decades on it.
Right. A well-known figure in that field.
Yeah. So our mission basically is to explore his ideas, specifically around our core values, how we judge ourselves, others.
And how understanding all that can maybe lead to a more liberated life.
That's the goal, a more meaningful, liberated experience.
Yeah.
And yeah, we're working directly from the transcript of this interview he did. So to kick things off, Dr. DeMartini says something that, wow, it really makes you stop and think. He says, the magnificence of who you are is far greater than any fantasies you'll ever put on yourself.
That's quite a statement.
It is, isn't it? It immediately throws that question out there. How well do we actually know ourselves? You know that old saying, know thyself, be thyself, love thyself.
Of course. The ancient Greek maxim.
It suddenly feels incredibly relevant.
Yes, absolutely. And this whole idea of self, well, it's been debated by thinkers for centuries. What really makes up us?
It's a huge question.
It is. And some philosophers suggest our sense of self isn't maybe as fixed as we think. It can expand, connect more with the world.
Okay.
Well, other views look at, our inner world versus our outer experience. But exploring this idea of self is, well, it's fundamental to understanding what drives you.
Right. And Dr. DeMartini takes this idea and looks at it from these two, extreme perspectives, cosmic and quantum.
The macro and the micro.
Exactly. He points out, you look at the universe, the sun, the galaxy, all these superclusters, and suddenly we feel tiny, insignificant almost.
Like a speck of dust.
A speck of dust.
But then you zoom right in, down to the quantum level, the very building blocks of everything, and you find, well, you're connected to it all, fundamentally.
It's a total paradox.
It is, being nothing and everything all at once.
Right.
But the key thing here, for you, the listener, is noticing how much perspective shapes this understanding.
Oh.
This isn't just some cool fact. It really highlights how your viewpoint influences what you believe about yourself, about the world, and that's a thread we'll definitely pull on more.
Got it. Okay, so building on that big picture view, we get into something Dr. DeMartini sees as absolutely foundational, our values.
Right.
He talks about wondering why some people seem so purposeful, so driven, while others just struggle, finding motivation.
That constant battle.
And his conclusion, it boils down to our personal hierarchy of values. The things that truly matter to us, ranked.
What's most important, what's least.
Yeah. He uses himself as an example.
Yeah.
Like research and teaching, super high on his list.
Okay.
Cooking or driving, way down at the bottom. So the question for you becomes, what's actually at the top of your list?
And what's so powerful about this focus on values is how they act like your internal compass, really.
Okay.
They dictate what you notice, what you pay attention to, the choices you make every single day. And yeah, ultimately, the direction your life takes.
So they shape your destiny, essentially.
That's what Dr. DeMartini emphasizes, yes.
Oh, sorry.
Our values and our destiny are deeply linked. When you live aligned with what you hold most dear, you feel this natural drive. Intrinsic, you're inspired from within.
Okay.
But when your actions don't match your core values, that's when you often need external pushes. Rewards, maybe, or even fear of consequences just to get going.
So it's that difference between being motivated externally versus being inspired internally. That's key. An inspired life, fueled by those top values, that's where you find that flow, that inner spark, right? Think about a time you were totally lost in something you were doing.
Yeah.
Chances are it lined up perfectly with what you value most.
Absolutely. Philosophers like Aristotle talked about the telos.
Telos.
Yeah, the ultimate aim or purpose of a thing. You could think of your highest value as your personal telos. It's that guiding principle giving your life meaning. That's teleology, the study of purpose.
Ah, okay. So living by your highest values gives you purpose.
It leads to a life with greater meaning, greater fulfillment. You're prioritizing actions that resonate deeply.
And it's so crucial, isn't it, that these values are personal. There's no right or wrong answer here.
Not at all.
Whether it's raising a family, fighting for a cause, focusing on fitness, learning, That's your truth. Nobody else can dictate that for you.
Exactly right. And your identity, in a very real way, it forms around this highest value. Well, it shapes how you see yourself. That's ontology, your sense of purpose, teleology, like we said, and even how you seek knowledge, epistemology. It becomes the main filter for your experience.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Dr. DeMartini links these values to what he calls voids.
Ah, the voids,
Because these are the things that just, drive you crazy when you see them in other people, the things you judge really harshly, but often they're things you're unwilling to admit exist in yourself. Let's unpack that a bit.
Yeah, this is where it gets really useful for your own self-reflection. Because that highest value, it often becomes the very tool you unconsciously use to try and fill these voids.
Wait, how does that work?
Well, think about it. Those qualities in others that trigger your strongest negative reaction, they might actually mirror parts of yourself you haven't fully accepted or integrated yet.
So we project outwards what we don't want to own inside.
Very often, yes. We're hesitant to own it internally, so we see it out there.
Which leads us perfectly into talking about judgment itself. Dr. DeMartini mentions how we tend to project our own values onto others.
Yeah.
Right, like assuming our priorities should be theirs too. Has anyone ever judged you for how you spend your time or money?
Oh, sure. Happens all the time.
It's usually just because their value hierarchy is different from yours.
Exactly. And what's really insightful here is his idea of complete pairs of opposites.
Okay.
For every value you hold dear, there's a natural counterpoint. And then he brings in this concept, the law of aristic escalation.
Aristic escalation, what's that?
Think of it like this. The more rigidly proud you are about your values, and the more you judge others who don't share them, the more likely life is to throw situations at you that challenge that rigidity. It's like a feedback mechanism, pushing you back towards balance, towards greater self-awareness.
Because, as he says, being too proud or too ashamed both act like blinders. They stop you seeing yourself clearly.
Right. True authenticity comes when you can see that the seeing and the seen, what you observe externally, are often reflections of your internal world, like a mirror.
So integrating the things we admire and the things we dislike in others by finding those same traits in ourselves, that's the path.
It's a journey, a continuous process. Dr. DeMartini talks about his own 51-year exploration of this. It's about going beyond surface judgments, recognizing we're all interconnected.
And he connects judgment directly to being, well, less conscious, suggesting real consciousness doesn't leave much room for judgment, only for understanding, maybe even love.
It makes you think, how many of our snap judgments stem from those unowned parts of ourselves?
He puts it so simply. If life is a mirror,
then judgment implies a lack of self-recognition.
Exactly. And resentment. He says that often comes from shame we've pushed away, disowned parts.
Okay.
And then we project those feelings onto someone else, blaming them for emotions that are actually ours.
Wow. That can turn up some heavy stuff, thinking about past judgments we've made or received. How do you navigate that emotional baggage? Well, Dr. DeMartini suggests that grief often comes from comparing yourself, your past self, your actions to some kind of fantasy. An ideal of how you should have been.
Right, beating yourself up.
Yeah, for not meeting an unrealistic standard. But the reality is those perceived failures or mistakes, they're part of your growth. Opportunities to learn, to expand your understanding, your compassion.
He shares this incredible story about literally going through the Oxford English Dictionary.
Yes.
All 4,628 human behavioral traits and consciously owning each one within himself.
It's an amazing exercise in radical self-acceptance.
It really is.
And it perfectly shows how the exact same behavior can look totally different depending on your values. What one person calls determination.
Another calls stubbornness.
Exactly. It's all about the lens you're using.
It's like that hall of mirrors idea he uses, reflecting back all the complex, sometimes contradictory, parts of being human.
And the key, he stresses, is transcendence through ownership. Not by pushing away the uncomfortable bits. Everything has a role, even the stuff we dislike. Which brings us to the idea that judgment often stems from missing information. Entropy, sometimes called, not seeing the whole picture.
He also mentions how our minds create anti-memories to balance things out.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Like after intense joy, maybe a subtle undercurrent of anxiety, or after sadness, a flicker of relief, the brain seeking equilibrium.
Like finding balance?
Which speaks to what he calls a mature intellect, the ability to hold opposing ideas or feelings at the same time.
Like polarity. Relief and grief are on the same spectrum of love.
Exactly. Recognizing the connection, not just the opposition.
And this links back to infatuation and resentment. if you get too infatuated with something.
You set yourself up to resent its opposite. You
Right.
try to separate things that are inherently inseparable.
Right.
Wilhelm Wundt, one of the fathers of psychology, noticed something interesting. Seeing contrasts simultaneously, that can be liberating, but seeing them one after the other sequentially, that can polarize your view.
Right. Like his example with the water temperatures.
Yeah.
How dipping your hand in cold water makes lukewarm feel hot.
Precisely. It shows how easily contrast can skew our perception of ourselves and others, of our subjective bias warping reality.
But he also says nature gives us feedback, like nudges back towards authenticity.
Yeah, often through the consequences of our own imbalances. Life has a way of guiding us back if we pay attention.
Okay, so this brings us towards the law of attraction, made famous by The Secret, right?
Mm-hmm. Very popular concept.
But Dr. DeMartini offers a bit of a refinement, doesn't he?
Hmm.
He says the real secret behind the secret is.
Deep self-awareness and living in alignment with your highest values. That's the core of it.
He explains our value hierarchy acts like a filter.
Mm.
In the brain, the thalamus filters what we even notice.
Right.
He uses that example of the mother in the mall who spots the lost child instantly.
While her business-minded husband is noticing shock displays or opportunities.
Yeah. Their values literally shape what they perceive.
So living by your highest values makes that filtering process really efficient. You start noticing synchronicities, opportunities that align with your core purpose.
And if you're chasing goals that don't align,
You might feel like you're constantly hitting walls, swimming upstream.
he also hints at, like, subtle senses, things beyond our usual five.
Yeah, suggesting there's more to perception than we currently map scientifically, an area of growing understanding.
And this connects to the idea that our dominant thoughts can manifest externally.
When they're backed up by consistent actions and perceptions, which again are filtered by our values, it's not just wishful thinking.
He mentioned a study in doctors' offices.
Yes, where inactive patients apparently return just because the staff focus their thoughts on them, it suggests a subtle influence.
And he sees these synchronicities happening all the time in his breakthrough experience program.
Reinforcing that idea. Know yourself, live by your values. That's the key.
He even gives 7 questions you can ask yourself to increase the chances of your main goals actually happening.
Yeah, they're powerful prompts. They help clarify intentions, spot potential blocks, and really align your actions with what matters most. Practical tools for living with purpose.
Okay, so for anyone listening who's really striving, trying to reach the top in their field, he talks about inspired action. What drives that?
Well, first, it starts with clearly defining your area of mastery. What's your thing? For him, it was human behavior.
Right.
Then it's about shifting the question, not just what do I want from life, but maybe what does life want from me?
That's a deeper question.
It is. And recognizing that your values aren't static, they're a mix of your innate drives and all the influences you've absorbed over time.
He shares his own story too, right? Overcoming challenges, learning difficulties.
Yeah, seeing those early struggles, those voids, as the very things that shaped his highest value teaching and researching. Finding strength in the struggle.
That's powerful. And then there was that story about the South African businessman.
Oh, the reframing story.
Yeah.
Incredible. What seemed like a horrific trauma.
Yeah.
He reframed it into a moment of immense gratitude, something that positively changed his entire life path. It just shows the power of the story we tell ourselves.
Which ties into reframing our own stories. Shifting from feeling like a victim to being the author of your destiny. Like that adopted kid inspired by famous orphans.
Exactly. Taking charge of the narrative. Then he talks about moral hypocrisy,
Well,
how it's often used for control. He contrasts that with self-governance, finding your own inner balance, what he calls equilibrium.
so if we lack that inner compass,
We tend to look for external rules, authorities, politicians, media, whatever, to tell us how to live.
and a huge takeaway here is embracing all of ourselves. The good, the bad, the hero, the villain.
The saint and the sinner within, not trying to suppress parts of the human experience, owning the whole spectrum.
And this applies globally too.
Yeah.
Like the balance of peace and war.
He suggests true inner peace isn't the absence of turmoil, but the ability to hold both peace and conflict within yourself. Think about family gatherings.
Good point. Always a mix of harmony and discussion.
Exactly, because you need both support and challenge. Peace and a kind of war, overcoming obstacles for growth, personally, collectively. He even tells a story from a peace conference that highlights this.
Right.
Ultimately, suffering, he says again, is often just the inability to see both sides at once, That story of the young girl's trauma.
Reframed as an opportunity.
Exactly. And it's fascinating, the word passion originally meant to suffer.
No way.
Yeah. So real mastery isn't just sympathy, it's deeply understanding and integrating those tough experiences.
Like that Emerson quote about rough electric shocks waking us up.
Disrupting our comfortable view. Our brains are wired for homeostasis, seeking balance through these pairs of opposites.
Like Leibniz and the random dots that weren't random.
Yeah. Hidden order. Even things that look chaotic, like Brownian motion Einstein studied, have deep mathematical structure underneath.
He even mentioned biology challenging ideas about entropy.
Suggesting life itself might be a temporary island of order in a universe moving towards disorder. Negentropy, they sometimes call it.
And we see order everywhere, right? Solar systems, galaxies.
Intricate structures. Which leads him to suggest maybe the Big Bang Theory isn't the full story.
Wow. Okay. That opens up big ideas like panpsychism, consciousness in everything.
Yeah, thinkers like Freeman Dyson explored that. And he mentions Montaigne's work on water memory. Maybe hinting at fields or forces beyond our current grasp.
But the core principle remains.
Pairs of opposites in balance. Whether it's cosmology or human behavior, the same fundamental dynamics are at play. He even sees religious concepts evolving with our brain development, tied to our basic fears and desires.
So what's true religion or true science then, in his view?
The recognition of that symmetry, seeing the balance in all the pairs of opposites, and the path from judgment to love. That's integrating these opposites in your own mind, mental equanimity.
Okay. And he circled back to the triggers for judgment. Looks, actions, inactions.
And how pride and shame distort cause and effect. Taking real accountability frees you from that emotional trap.
Wisdom and love being inseparable, like his cufflinks. And that Howard Hughes advice.
Dedicate your life to the love of wisdom and the wisdom of love. Beautiful, isn't it?
It really is. And remembering knowledge is relative. There's so much we don't know. Socrates, Einstein.
Yeah. Always learning. Anything you don't love yet is just highlighting your own ignorance, in a way.
He shared that story about being asked if he was enlightened.
Yes. Highlighting relative awareness versus some impossible state of complete knowledge keeps you humble, keeps you learning.
And practically, this means delegating things lower on your value list.
Focus your energy on what truly inspires you intrinsically. Fulfillment comes from mastering what you value most, and often that leads naturally to wanting to give back, to philanthropy.
So looking forward, what's his big vision for humanity?
Well, his personal drive is still clear. Teach, research, write, travel. Just get this knowledge out there. Empower people to understand themselves better.
And he stresses having clear metrics in life, clear goals.
Yeah, measures for progress. So you can take aligned action. He breaks it down into 7 areas to empower.
Spiritual, mental, vocational.
Financial, family, social, physical. A whole life framework.
He also mentioned past experiences with psychedelics, but shifted towards meditation.
Right. A pivotal moment was meeting a yogi on a beach in Hawaii. That really opened his eyes to the power within his own mind, accessible through meditation.
Did he share any really wild mystical experiences?
He mentioned one time during meditation becoming aware of a big car crash happening elsewhere, like a synchronous awareness.
Wow.
As for aliens, he said nothing confirmed, though he humorously mentioned trying. He's open, but needs evidence. But mostly, he emphasizes seeing the magic in the mundane, the order all around us.
So his final thought for you, the listener.
It's really about embracing your own magnificence, living authentically true to your highest values, and letting that natural desire to grow, to expand your consciousness, guide you toward making a real impact, leaving a legacy.
He actually said this was one of his favorite interviews. And honestly, it's been an incredibly rich deep dive for us too. Really profound insights.
Absolutely. A lot to think about.
So thank you for sharing all that.
Yeah.
We really encourage you listening to maybe sit with this. What really resonated, what sparked something for you. You can find out more about Dr. John DeMartini at JohnDeMartini.pdf. We'll put the link in the description.
Definitely worth exploring further.
And please, share your thoughts with us. What were your aha moments from this? We'd love to hear. Till next deep dive, take care.